Okay, so what we're looking at right here is called the grid method. Now, like I was saying, it's really difficult for people to get proportion right, and one of the easiest ways to do this is the grid method. It only works really if you're copying a drawing to another drawing, or a picture to a picture. It doesn't work if you're actually life drawing. So we'll cover different methods that use life drawing as like a touch point. So if you're using the grid method, what you're going to do is you start by making 1-inch squares all over, and you're creating a grid. So the best way to do it is, like I tried to rush and obviously it screwed up a little bit. What you want to do is make sure that the squares have 2 points. So 1 point here, 1 point here. You want them to be as close to being perfect squares as possible. If you do it wrong, it really complicates, it makes what you're going to be doing a lot harder. So this method is all about like investing a lot of time in the actual prep in the beginning and then kind of reaping the benefits later. So what I'm doing here is doing my squares. These are 1 inch by 1 inch. And then I'm just going to create my grid specifically over the area that I want to copy. You don't have to create a grid over the area that you're not going to copy. So like for example, this is just how I'm, bear with me as I get this in.
Reciprocity issue, please underline. No one at the
All right. Okay, so now I've got my grid over this thing. I know exactly where I'm going to copy, and then I get my bigger sheet of paper. So because this paper, ideally, I would get a much larger sheet. Do I have this? Okay, I have this sheet, so I can use this. So if I'm looking at this, I decide that the area that I'm going to do is here. I'm going to do 1. I'm going to do this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. Okay, so what I've done essentially is I've created the area that I'm actually going to draw. I don't need to use this other area because the image isn't there, right? There's no point in me doing this entire thing unless I want to copy this exactly. So what I'm going to look at here is I want to make this image bigger. You don't necessarily always have to make it bigger. You could do the exact same measurements on the piece of paper that you're going to copy and it would be the exact same size. Just to show you how I can make it bigger, I'm doing this for the sake of this. So I've got 4 inches across. So that means to make this big, I need to have at least 8 inches across on my paper. Okay, so I'm looking at my big paper. So I can do 2 inches. So this means that I'm going to be doubling the size of my drawing. All right, and like I said, I'm just taking stock of the fact that we're doing this. So I'm going to do another set of these little ticks so that the squares are actually square. They're not just me guessing. 4, 6, 8. When you're doing it on your good copy, by the way, you do not want to press hard, okay? Because eventually we're going to erase these lines. So we want it to be very big, dark enough so that you can see, but not so dark that it's going to leave a lasting line so that when you try to erase it, it's going to look really, really bad. So light hand is better than a dark hand on this. Okay, so now I'm looking at this side and 9, so then I need 9 times 2, which is 18, which is fine. So I'm making the other side.
Please underline, at the time of Confederation and 4 decades to come, women in Canada were not considered human beings. So they were an extension of
2, 4, 6, 8, 16, 18. Okay, same thing over on this side. You always, like I said, you always want to do at least 2 reference points when you're doing a grid, otherwise it's going to mess up really bad. And once your squares are out of whack, you may as well just throw the entire thing away because it's not going to work. Your proportion's going to be really wonky.
So maybe someone somewhere said, oh my goodness, these
So again, prep work for this is actually a lot longer than it takes to get everything done properly.
You should respect them. So somewhere, and someone's brain is placed. Please underline Nellie McClung would lead the charge in Manitoba in 1912. That is when you know. Then I want you to flip the page, immigration. Please underline the movement of people into a country from other countries. During the period of 1901 to 11, Canada experienced its greatest wave of immigration to this day. Please underline the Transcontinental Railway provided the ride out west for many. Please underline Europe was fast changing from rural to urban and needed Canada's weak to its people. Please underline pull factors, free land, education, jobs,
Okay.
and freedom of expression.
So now I'm done my grid. If I look here, you can see it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Now
education, jobs,
I
and
reference.
freedom of expression pull people to Canada.
So even if I want to make it easier for myself, I can do the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I can do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. All right. I like to start at the corner. So again, super easy. I can see the shape. If I look at this square, I try to match that shape. It's not about drawing the entire thing as a whole. It's about focusing on the tiny squares and making them work together. Right? So then if I look at 2, right here, it's just a little corner. So then I just make sure there's a little corner there. Then I can go over here where it says 2 and 3 and do that little tip of the toe.
Run from their countries.
And then for this one, I could look at where it hits on the big toe and then just do a little one there.
So do you see that the causes?
Okay, so you guys get the basic idea of what I'm doing. I've used the small grid to help me grid better on the larger scale. So you guys all have a ruler. You guys all have the package. You can choose, so for the 3 ends, I want you to choose one of the figures, your choice. So I believe there's a figure of a male sitting, and then there's a figure of a female stretching at the back. So you may choose one of those, and you're going to do what I did, place a grid over top of it, and then I'll provide you with a piece of paper, and you're going to try to make that image either, depending on the paper, because it's in the back, the same size, or preferably try to blow it up. Okay, the reason we're doing this is so that when you do your figure in motion on the good sheet of paper, you're going to be able to get the proportions right. Otherwise, when you're trying to do the muscles and the skeleton, it's really going to mess you up. It's going to be super, super confusing. So, any questions about what we're doing here? Anyone? All right. So you've all got your rulers with you. I told you you'll get to the very first break to work on that 3, that close-up assignment. So if you haven't finished that yet, you have till the first break to work on it. That should be in... Okay, so break 1 starts at 9:35. So that gives you, actually we'll do to the second instructional time, so 9:50. Okay, at 9:50, I want you to at the very least put the grid on your new piece of paper. All right? So you have your assignments, you know what you're doing. Everybody, get working.
What else? Desirable, undesirable? What would be undesirable? Has a criminal record for sure, Valeria? Yeah, smuggling. What do you mean by that, though? Like how, what is that?
No, that's okay, you take it.
So you can't say useless because people aren't useless. How would we word that? Not willing to work? But not willing to work? Why are some immigrants chosen over others?
Oh, no, I'll get you.
Some of them are looking
Yes.
maybe they are a chunk of people coming in where Canada is short in that labor sector, and this bunch coming in fits that. They're like, oh, this is perfect, we've been waiting for people like you for 2 years. Come on in. Why else would they be chosen over others? That would be discriminating based on someone's education, so you couldn't say, you can't come in here because you have a high school diploma and you have a PhD. That would be discriminatory. Why would, yes, Madeline? What do you mean by the reason in the house?
I was just wondering. Yeah, you're good.
But it comes down to the criminal
Okay,
record.
guys, so when you're ready,
If you
this
don't have
is the
criminal
larger
record,
piece of paper you're gonna transfer onto.
you're good to go.
All right, it's gonna be right here, obviously socially distanced, so if you see someone up here, don't run up and shove them out of the way to get it. But as you're going about your day, please take one of these
Also,
sheets.
Another reason some people need to be let in sooner is because they actually qualify for refugee status. If they are escaping death or persecution or war from their country. So please write down on your own sheet, seeking refugee status, are actual refugees. What is an example of a mass amount of refugees seeking peace, opportunity, freedom? Oh, that's refugee status. Remember the mass immigration of Syrian refugees? Or any refugee that flees a war-torn country. They would also be processed a little bit faster and a little bit more different